Today, we are learning basketball with Charlie Cummings. You can find his work on Swish Theory, covering the Golden State Warriors, the Nuggets, writer for DraftKings Network, Dubs Noise for Warriors Invite, and not a Stan account, but he does love some Klay Thompson. I mean, who doesn't? So, excited to dive right into all things Warriors, little Denver too. I mean, what a game last night. Aaron Gordon, another game winner. The first player to have, what was it, 2 game-winning shots in the last 5 seconds of a game on the road in NBA playoff history. Like, that's never happened before, and he's done it, like, twice in about a 2-week span. So how about Mr. Clutch, Mr. Nugget, Mr. Denver over there?
Dude, in 8 games too, like you said, not in any NBA playoffs, and we just started the second round. That's so wild. He's
Wow.
he's unreal. But yeah, man, I'm doing great. These playoffs have been just 10 out of 10 so far. It's unreal watching these guys compete. And yeah, last night sums it up perfectly. I mean, I know we're not touching on Knicks Celtics as much, but like you're thinking, oh, here comes the blowout. Here we go. And then Knicks storm all the way back. They force overtime. Brunson rims out with the chance to win it, and then they still win it in overtime. Like, just oh my god! And then that Nuggets Thunder game, just unreal stuff back to back.
Just crazy. I mean, AG gets the tip slam dunk in round 1, and then, I mean, that play at the end, you could see, like, there were jokes online, like, Russell Westbrook has the ball pushing the pace with 8 seconds left. Literally anything can happen at that moment. Like, you have no idea if he's just gonna turn around and run the other direction, or you have no idea what's gonna happen next, but he makes a great decision. You can see Chet kind of cheat over a little bit to close off the paint, take that away from Russ, and it's either he goes 1-on-2 or he makes the right read, kick out for the open three. He makes the right read. AG splashes it. Credit to him in that 3-point shooting. Gordon, made note after a playoff loss with this team not long ago that he just really needs to dial in on how to help this Denver team and his work on things that will help him in this specific role. And that catch and shoot 3-point shot is the big one, where it's always been a little off, I guess, a little inconsistent, a little lower percentage than you would want for someone that gets so many of those catch and shoot threes. And to see him just knock down the big shot when it matters, I mean, that's just a credit to all the work he puts in. And this year showed it. I mean, he was a 40% 3-point shooter this year, his best 3-point shooting year by far. And it's just a credit to, obviously, he gets better looks than ever before playing with Jokic, but he's gotten those looks the last few years. This is also from him putting in that work, and now he's got a reliable 3-point shot to just add to kind of his versatility. One of the most versatile two-way players in the league right now, especially defensively.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of his growth on stage last night because not only was it his best 3-point shooting game of the playoffs, which is huge. I mean, before tonight, he was only shooting like 31% and goes 3 for 6. That's big time. But 7 offensive rebounds, 14 total boards, 22 points. I think the other thing, too, that really has stood out for me is just his consistency in these playoffs. Like, you haven't felt like there's been a game where the bottom drops out offensively. And, the defense is going to be there. Like, he's an incredible backline rotator. He can take those big forward/wing matchups really well. You can't really, like, switch him and put him in a bad position because he's athletic enough to move with pretty much anybody. So when you already have that defensive baseline, and then, worst case scenario, he's giving you like 15 points a night, and he's shooting the ball well, and he's hitting the glass, and he's making plays too. Like, that's the other thing that surprised me is he's making some good passes. I just can't say enough about how important he's been. And I think that play last night at the end, before we get into just the chaos of that fourth quarter and everything, like, I think that really showed the experience and just the readiness for the moment that the Nuggets have, because Chet misses the one free throw and you're like, okay, things are starting to happen.
Mm.
You're like, now we got something. They can't foul. He misses the second, and they are instantly out on a break. Everyone's filling their lanes. I think it's impressive, too, that, Jokic did everything for them last night, completely uninvolved on the game-winning play. And Brown breaks out. He draws Shea in transition. He hits Russ, and Russ, like you said, I wish I could remember who I saw the tweet from. They said that transition layup was calling to him, like
Right.
like, and he was thinking about it, but like he's a pro. He knows they're also thinking about it, and so he gets into the lane. He draws Chet in just enough to make the closeout to AG almost impossible. I think he was maybe a little late on it, but still, I mean, it's a tough play to like, you don't want to let Russ go one-on-one into someone's body with the game on the line. And yeah, perfect read, hits the shot. I think you really just saw like just the gap in experience, in readiness for the moment. I mean, you hate to, look at 2 free throws and be like, well, the guy's not ready, for that. But I think just putting the sum of the events together at the end, you're like, just Nuggets just kept whittling the lead away. It seems like Oklahoma City got a little bit outside of their normal offensive structure down the stretch. And then that last play, you just saw, it's like, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not fully prepared for the moment at the end of these games, it can come back to bite you. And it did. And now the Nuggets have just stole home court advantage from the best team in the league. I mean, that's just what the playoffs are.
Right. They stole it just like that. And yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the experience is the big thing here, where the Thunder have been just an incredible all-time team. Like, this defense is generational, you could say. Like, it's one of the best team defenses we've seen, collection, roster of talent defensively that we've seen. They got an MVP candidate, multiple all-star types too. But, if they have any weakness to bog down just a little bit, it might be when Shea is doubled, what is the offensive game plan from there? And we saw Jalen Williams go 5 for 20 tonight. That's not what they need from essentially their second star. Chet Holmgren 5 for 11. They probably need a little bit more from him too, even though it was pretty efficient. He was 0 for 3. You mentioned the 2 missed free throws at the end that opened the door up. And I remember that play. It's like there was one little instinct from Westbrook where he just takes off. Like, he could have gone in and grabbed the rebound himself, but I guess like he realized that someone else on his team got it. Like, he was about to fight his teammates for the rebound, and then he takes off in transition. And I think that was just a heads up play, like knowing, like, okay, we got it. Let me break out. We only have 7 or 8 seconds here to score, and let me get downhill in transition and see if me taking off can help. And it did. It was a vital part of pushing the pace and then finding the open three. And yeah, just an insane, like, fourth quarter, I suppose, just up and down. They cut it to like 11 and 7, and then they get the lead back up. Shea's hitting some tough shots. Like, he's keeping the lead ahead. Like, he had one play where I thought Aaron Gordon kind of stopped him, and then he just hits like a step back 3 over a double contest. It's like, all right, Shea, just keep doing your thing. Shea still, showed up 12 for 26 from the field, 33 points, 10 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals. But that fourth quarter, some interesting decision making. I think you might have some thoughts on the strategy of the Thunder being up 3 and choosing to foul instead of just playing straight up. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah. So my general thing is, first of all, I don't think fouling up 3 should be legal in the first place. I place the burden on the NBA for that because there's no real equivalent in any other sport where you can intentionally do something illegal against the rules to your own advantage, like to protect a lead. I get it when it's like, well, you're losing, you're willing to trade free throws and points, but you're losing, so you're desperate. I don't think when you're winning, you should be allowed to do it in the first place. So I don't necessarily fault Mark Daniel for doing what is legal in the rule book. But at the same time, I think when they started fouling, there were 13 seconds on the clock, like a decent amount of time. And I think what we've seen is, I think it's different if you are playing like the Celtics. If the Celtics are down 3 and there's 15 seconds on the clock, you're going, shit, like all 5 players on that team can shoot threes. The Nuggets are not that team. I mean, unless they want to just like completely change their lineups and put guys like Julian Strawther out there who just aren't as experienced, who you probably don't trust in that moment. They don't have like 1 to 5 very good shooting. And there was a lot of time on the clock. So to me, I think the failure was, I mean, yes, it's a dumb rule. I don't think it should be allowed. But I think the failure was, if it's 13 seconds left, like you can really just crowd the 3-point line and trust your defense, which you should. You have the best defense in the league. You have the best perimeter defenders in the league. If you want to go like, 4 out, if you want to like take a guy like Chet off the floor, just have Hartenstein be the rebounder. You can go like Shea, Caruso, Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, and have like 4 extremely good perimeter defense hounds trying to run them off the line, trying to contest that shot. They're almost never going to call a foul unless it's like egregious on a 3-point attempt that late. So to me, the strategy was bad because that's going to be a low percentage shot. And even if the Nuggets make it, you've got a chance to win it. Like there's a very, very few scenarios where the Nuggets get a shot up and hit it and don't leave you enough time to go get a game winner. So that to me was kind of like almost a little karmic justice in a way, where it's like, yeah, you tried to play the foul game. I don't think the Nuggets missed a free throw while being fouled down 3. And on the reverse end, Chet misses both of his free throws. You give them a window and you lose. And that's where I think is the fault, is you didn't trust your defense and you leave so much tension in the air because it's just, it's like an insane sprint in, it's 5 intense seconds trying to cover everybody and then foul on each inbounds. And then it's a long layoff where you're just thinking about it and someone's shooting free throws. And I think that played right into Denver's hand because they've been here before. We've seen this group do it together. We've seen Russ do it. And yeah, I just think, if you're going to give the more experienced team a chance to play in more intense moments and you're putting your young team out there with a lot of time to think about things, just bad stuff's going to happen. And it really burned them there. So yeah, I don't fault Daniel for being like, let's foul up 3, because generally that is the smart move, but I don't think that was the time or the place to do it, and it really cost them.
Yeah, and it really brings nothing to the entertainment factor of it all, which at the end of the day, this is like, entertainment for fans, for like it can be both. It is a serious game of basketball and it is also a entertainment product for fans to watch. It's where all the hype comes from. So no one really wants to see just a free throw battle to end it. They want to see a game-winning shot, game-tying shot either go in or get defended, or a game-saving block. Like, they want to see the action, not the free throws. So that alone makes it just, pointless in my opinion as well. But I see some of the strategy of what you're saying as well, where you don't want to give up an open 3 to elite 3-point shooters, but maybe you do want to give up an open 3 to bad 3-point shooters. So was it really the best strategy is there? And then there's the idea that maybe they'll, if you think the Nuggets are going to get a transition opportunity after all of this strategy boils down, like, how can you avoid that? Like, how can you make sure your half court defense is set? And giving up a transition play is not that. That's how you lose the game, is you give up a wide open 3 in transition instead of kind of having your set defense against the half court offense. And maybe that kind of feeds into that as well. I mean, it's kind of a ripple effect, I suppose, with some of the free throws on both ends. But just wild game. I mean, Jokic, 42 points, 22 boards, 6 assists, a steal, 2 blocks, 7 turnovers. But he's doing everything else out there. He's just an incredible talent. Like, there's never a game where it feels like every game there's a new stat line that you never see before. and he's just hitting these insane shots. Super clutch. Like they're down 11. He's responsible for pretty much the entire comeback, other than that game-winning shot. I mean, he's backing down from the perimeter for a hook shot. He's facing up Hartenstein for a pull-up three. And I love that, like, for a lot of players, their face-up game is like, all right, I'm gonna threaten the jab step. Like, here I come. I'm gonna get past you with speed. And Jokic is just like tiptoeing, like, yeah, I might lean forward, or I might just stand straight up and not even jump and just hit a 3-point pull-up shot like it's a free throw in your face without creating any space at all. And he just does that instead. So incredible talent. Just great comeback there. Was there any other nuggets that kind of popped out to you in this one with their effort? Really an all-around effort. Like if Jokic is going to take down this all-time Thunder team, he needs the help that this Nuggets team has provided. Honestly, since the coaching change, I mean, at least in the first round, like they've really, some of the role guys have really shown up. And I'm not sure if it's the lack of coach in front office. You would think a lot of that would create turmoil, but that veteran experience, really that chemistry and continuity and being there before that you hit on as well, I think is what ultimately gives this group a real chance, because it's not just a collection of random players. It's a championship team, a core four with guys that have played together for a while, and the immediate chemistry brought in from a Westbrook signing, where he's just looked like a perfect combination of the dynamic, the explosiveness that this roster sort of lacked. So you got Russell Westbrook dropping 18, Jamal gave you 21, Gordon gave you 22, even Braun chipped in 11 double digits there. Was there anyone else that kind of popped? Because I think like Westbrook, for example, like his energy is once again really popped out. Just the activity where he's really trying defensively, and it seems like he's making an impact there, where he had one play where he stunted at and actually kind of fully doubled Shea at the perimeter. The ball kicks the corner, and Westbrook drops back to the rim. The corner guy attacks the closeout, tries to score at the rim, and then he's met by Westbrook and Peyton Watson at the rim, just like arms everywhere. You can just feel Westbrook out there. So is he the one that kind of jumped out to you from this game, or anyone else?
Yeah, I think the point you said too about the chemistry this group has is everything. Even like Christian Brown wasn't a starter, and he was part of this group, but he wasn't like as integral. And I think it's big that he has that chemistry. And you said too with Westbrook, he's been unreal. Like you really can't say enough about him. And I think it's pretty amazing that he's been able to do this. But he just fits in like a glove immediately. Like the chemistry he has with Jokic is unreal. The way he fits in with the other players on this team is pretty unbelievable. And he definitely stands out. Not only his decision making, but the way they can rely on his scoring is pretty amazing. I think he said it best after that game 7 where he's like, my job is just chaos. Like, you don't know what I'm going to do.
Oh, yeah.
And, it really is perfect. Like, he makes big plays and then he immediately gives the ball away somehow. Like, he did that late in the game in just hilarious fashion.
The Westbrook experience. You never know what you're going to get.
The Westbrook experience has never been more alive than it is right now. But I think that kind of thing, like, going back to when Russ was the guy on those Oklahoma City teams, I was like, having the experience as like your primary form of offense, it's like you're just hovering over the third rail all the time. And when he's a role player, like when he's your sixth man off the bench, when he's playing important minutes, but he's like, on any given night, he's at most like your third option offensively. He can be as low as your fifth or sixth. That variability, like, plays really well when you have someone as consistent as Nikola Jokic, when you have guys like Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon who are being this consistent. It's like, hey, if Russ just decides to go off and give us 20 tonight, we're tough to beat. And if Russ, only gives us 5, we can weather that storm. And yeah, I think he really stood out. Christian Brown as well. He was a demon defensively, hit the boards hard. I thought it was pretty impressive that he had more rebounds than anyone on the Thunder. And clearly the Thunder have some issues to figure out on the glass because, yeah, 42 to 30 on the defensive glass, 21 to 13 offensive rebounds. That's a lot to overcome.
Yeah, and you would have maybe thought with the kind of the Twin Towers and the size that the Thunder have that they wouldn't have such a deficit on the boards, but they just got killed on the glass last night. I mean, just from the big three alone for Denver rebound wise, like Jokic grabbed 22 himself, Gordon grabbed 14, and Brown grabbed 13. Like, it's pretty rare that you get three double-digit rebounders on the same team, one of them in the 20s. So that's definitely something to watch. And on the Thunder side, like, credit to some of their players. Like Caruso was incredible, I thought. Like, his stat line real quick: 20 points, 6 assists, 5 steals, 2 blocks, all in 26 minutes. And it feels like he's just levitating out there sometimes. Like, he has incredible instincts where defensively Caruso just knows where to be. He had a nice sequence where he hit an open three, gets back on defense, perfectly reads what's coming, and just like walks into the steal for another like 4-point swing type turnover. Really incredible. Hartenstein as well. Sweet sequence there where I believe the Nuggets were on like a 4-on-1 break, and the ball kind of bounced around. They didn't know exactly what they wanted to do. Jokic ends up throwing a lob to MPJ, but it all takes so long to develop that Hartenstein recovers, gets back, makes a chase down block in like a 4-on-1 situation against his team where real energy play for his team. So you could feel him there. And I'm interested to see how they adjust. Like, to me, the Thunder need more scoring help from their secondary options. They got to figure out this rebounding battle that we mentioned. And I also think that the Nuggets probably played about as well as they could. Like, they got that was the type of help and game that Jokic needed to overcome this all-time defense. He needed that. I mean, we're talking about 70 points from 4 other players. He needs that kind of help for this team to really have a chance. But the chemistry continuity is there. The open shots are there. The pick and roll chemistry is there. They know how to take care of themselves. I mean, they know how to take care of the ball, and they've done it before. They're the Denver Nuggets with championship experience. We're looking at Aaron Gordon's chemistry is incredible with Jokic. That 2-man, 3-man game is incredible. It's just really hard to stop when it's flowing. And Jamal wasn't even having a heater last night like he has in some of these other games.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.
We're here to talk Warriors, little live reaction to last night's game, and just kind of hit on what's worked for them in the playoffs. I mean, they had this epic first-round series. Wanted to dive into how they actually escaped the Rockets when it looked like they might, lose a 3-1 series lead with the Rockets zone, their use of Steven Adams on the glass, how they adjusted to win that game. And then this whole new series will predict a little bit of how this series could play out, and then obviously react to last night's game. And, we'll see what happens, because the Steph injury is a pretty big wild card factor for the entire playoffs. I mean, it can turn a legit contender into not so much. Could swing the series, could swing the West. I mean, that's a pretty big one. So I figure we might as well start with last night's game a little bit, maybe work our way backwards with game 1, Timberwolves versus the Warriors. Steph goes out in the second quarter where he's hurt. The Warriors are up 27-20, and he looks like he pulls a hamstring or something, and tries to attempt a floater, misses it, is pulled, and Steph's gone. But my favorite part right after that, in a comedic way, Stan Van Gundy immediately compares Draymond Green, who starts just hitting threes as soon as Steph is taken out. And he's just calling Stan Van's comparing Draymond hitting threes with Steph out to like Magic Johnson filling in for Kareem at center during the first season of their team together. So kind of a funny little jab from Stan Van there, because Draymond started lighting it up. I mean, he'd he realized Steph was gone. They're going to need a little offensive help, and almost immediately hits 2 threes. He's like 4 or 5 from 3 up to that point early in the second quarter. Like, Draymond's feeling it, and I think people forget that he can actually hit the 3 ball every once in a while, even if you obviously rather him shoot it than Steph. But people forget he's got the 3-point range. That if it's working, it's something he realizes. If he has to step it up and be aggressive, then that's how he can kind of help the team offensively, when clearly they're going to need a spark with missing Steph.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was huge seeing him hit those threes right off the bat. It's needed when you kind of have this grinded out game. The stats on both teams in half court, the Warriors scored 83.5 points per 100 in the half court, and the Timberwolves scored 82.2. Like, it's just grinded out offense out there, just looking for any gaps, trying to get, guys you won't normally have shooting high volume to hit open shots. And Draymond had to be one of those, and he delivered. It was pretty incredible seeing him work on the defensive end too. I mean, we know that's where he's gonna make his presence felt. But I thought the most impressive thing from last night was Minnesota took 40% of their shots at the rim, and they only finished 53% of those looks. So just kind of an amazing backpack effort from Draymond to put a lid on them, because, I mean, we saw, like, they could not hit anything from outside. But, they could have easily won that game had they been able to convert at the rim. And, I think one of the things people always get this misconception of with the Warriors is, oh, well, they're small ball, so you're going to be able to bully them down. You're going to be able to, post them up or whatever. You're going to be able to get clean looks at the rim. You're not when Draymond's out there. He's just going to rotate. He's going to get into your body. He's going to make it hard. And I think, it's the primary driving factor of, you don't want to meet guys at the rim. When teams get gun shy and they want to take jump shots, it's because they fear contact down low in the restricted area. And yeah, usually that comes from a 7-footer, but like, Draymond has an unbelievable ability to jump into you and stay vertical and avoid fouling. So you still know, like, yeah, he's only 6'6", but like, I'm still going to get some punishment if I try to go to the rim while he's out there. So it was a pretty incredible defensive performance. And yeah, I can't say enough about this team. Like, we've seen every game so far in the second round be absolutely down to the wire. Just extremely close contests all the way around. And somehow the only game that wasn't even really that close. I mean, Minnesota made a comeback, but the Warriors held on to a double-digit lead for most of the game. Is somehow the game where the team with their most important player going out pulls it away. So it was just kind of, one of those nights where everything just broke in the Warriors' favor, and they were able to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I mean, they needed Draymond to step up. And, I was interested in a few different stat arguments, I guess, here between both teams. Since the Jimmy trade, Golden State is one of the best teams in the league. They're, at the very least, they have the 3rd best point differential, 8th on offense, 2nd on defense since that trade. But Minnesota's right there. They're, since that same mark, 6th point differential, 6th on offense, 9th on defense. It was actually surprising to look at their 4 factors. Minnesota's just kind of elite contending level range for every 4 factor. They are top 12, top 13 in literally all 8 of the two sides of the 4 factors, where their strongest parts of their game is not turning the ball over. They rank 6th in the league, and drawing free throws, they rank 7th. They're also, top 10 rebounding team on both sides. So that was some of the big question marks I had before the series. Will the Warriors force turnovers against a team that's great at not turning it over, seeing as the Warriors have been the best team in the league at forcing turnovers, and the Minnesota has been top 6 at not turning it over? And then the rebounding battle. These are 2 top 12 rebounding teams. The Warriors, especially on the offensive glass, rank 6th, versus the Minnesota ranks 8th on that same defensive glass side of things. So that's an interesting rebounding battle. And then the free throw battle. The Warriors had a problem with free throw percentage for a while, but now they're 1st in free throw rate since the Jimmy trade. and the Timberwolves are 12th at not fouling. So, these are some of the kind of statistical areas that I'm interested in to see who would kind of step up. But I mean, another big game for Buddy Hield, where I think Buddy is probably been as important of a player for this Warriors team in both of these huge games so far. Like, I'm not sure if anyone's had a bigger impact. And I mean, it's not just the threes. Obviously, in Game 7, which I'm sure we'll hit on, like Game 7, Buddy hit like all these threes, 30 something, like I think it was 33 points, nine threes or something like that. And he keeps it going in this one, and even to the point where he's stretching the defense out so far. We're seeing Buddy put the ball on the floor and drive to the rack, and he broke out a little scoop lefty layup, and Stan Van was like in awe of, like, I've never seen Buddy do that before. So it's kind of funny to see the reactions, because he is one of the greatest volume 3-point shooters to ever play, so he kind of gets looked at that way. But I kind of like how they're seemingly breathing confidence into Buddy to be as aggressive as possible, where they essentially need him to be like their Clay Light, their splash cousin. Like they need him to be that swing factor that he might just throw 6 threes into the mix when we need a guy like that, when Steph might not be hitting his in the first half, or Jimmy isn't looking for his shot until later in the game.
Yeah, and I think you touched on, the shift in some of the usage pattern there, because obviously when people think of Buddy Hield, first and foremost, they think of 3-point shooting, and as they should, because he's one of the best 3-point shooters this league has ever seen. If you just want to look at the numbers, the volume, the percentage he's hit, he's incredible at that. But, like you said, we saw it last night with that drive. He had another possession where late shot clock, he drove, got a guy down to the elbow, and just pulled up, had a beautiful rainbow ball pull up too. And, the Clay comparison is perfect, because Clay is always predominantly a 3-point shooter, but he's also a guy who could get into his spots in the mid-range, or if you gave him too much of an angle, he was going to drive it and finish with both hands. And I think that's kind of the shift, is they're telling Buddy, like, you don't need to be like Duncan Robinson. You don't need to be like a 90% 3-point rate guy. Like, we need you to mix it up. We need you to attack these closeouts, to drive and kick. And he's had some big time possessions with that. There were some late in the game where, he was getting hot, and he's immediately just like drawing closeouts, like aggressive closeouts, to run him off the line. And he just obliged. He was like, all right, I'm going to go down. I'm going to get into the dribble, and I'm going to find cutters. I'm going to kick it back out to Jimmy. So I think letting him play within the flow more than just like, man, we need you to get these threes up, is such an important thing, because I think not a lot has been, given credit to like I hate to use the word culture in any context. Thank you to the Miami Heat for ruining that. But just the environment that the Warriors create, where, there was all the talk about like, look, we've got Buddy Hield defending now, like actually like, moving his feet, getting in front of people. It's the environment that like empowers them to do this, because now he's playing with confidence. Now he's doing things that he wouldn't do before. And I think so many other teams would be like, well, you're Buddy Hield, so we're just going to like, run you off pin downs, or we're just going to like have you lifting from the corners. And if you don't get anything off that, oh, well. And the Warriors are like, no, like, you got an angle, you take it. You feel like confident on this drive, go drive. You feel like you got this pull up, go take it. And that kind of stuff, I think, has really paid off. And also, I got to give a shout out to him for being like the ultimate vibes guy right now. The Buddy Hield, Jimmy Butler, like buddy comedy that's
the
going
post-game conferences.
Dude,
conferences, they're hilarious.
They're so good. Like, I mean, just the whole, obviously, I think you saw the whole like Jimmy comment after the trade where he said, like, Steph's Batman and I'm Robin. He's like, I know my role, like that kind of thing. And then they would joke with Buddy and they'd crap on him and they say like, oh, well, you're Alfred. Like they just kind of like make fun of him and like keep going. And after in game 7, like Buddy at the press conference was just like behind Jimmy and yelling, "I'm Batman, I'm Batman." And yesterday after their post-game conference, like they're still joking about that. Like Buddy's still joking where he's just like, Jimmy's always Robin, but I'm Batman now, referring to Steph Curry. And I don't think you can it's hard to quantify the importance of that, but it's so easy to be this Warriors team. And even though you won the game last night, think, well, Steph's injured. Like, it's over. We don't know when he's going to be back. Like, we know hamstrings are tough. So there's a decent chance that he's not around for, the rest of the series, depending on how long it goes. And it's really easy to get down about that. And I think to have like an uplifting presence like that, someone who's just, making light of the situation, who's just staying positive, it's big because, this is a veteran team. They've been here before. They've dealt with injuries, but still, like, you need someone to just be that uplifting personality in the locker room when you're going through hard times.
Yeah, the spark plug, the veteran presence, but just like the feel good vibes. Like the vibes are good when you're winning. I mean, they make this midseason trade, like everyone can see the like glaring impact Jimmy has brought like before and after the trade, and more so just that the dynamic element that he brings next to Steph, I think, is what has unlocked so much. Is that you essentially get something in the realm of like the old Iguodala role, but he can also just pop off for 30 points as an ISO scorer when you need him in the clutch too. So he does all the little winning things right for winning plays when he's engaged like this, especially defensively, strip steals, pushing the pace, keeping the ball moving. But then he adds that scoring element where he does it in a way that's basically a polar opposite of Steph, and that's what I think makes their dynamic so hard to guard, is that you have like two gravitational pulls pulling against each other offensively, where Steph is pulling them away from the rim out on the perimeter, and Jimmy's sucking them into the rim, into the gravity of the paint with his downhill force play, his like methodical drives and his ability to draw fouls. And that just makes it so much harder to guard, because the moment you send two to the paint, you're opening up space for Steph or Buddy. The moment you send two to Steph, you're given single coverage or a mismatch to Jimmy and ISO inside the mid range. And so like it's just this constant push and pull that just makes them really hard to guard. And obviously they still have, that Draymond short roll, classic Warriors. Like the moment you double Steph, he's going to hit Draymond, and you're playing 4-on-3 against a really smart distributor. You're not going to stop that very often. They have gotten an open look off of that for 10 years running. Checking my fake watch here, but I checked some of the stats that I mentioned real quick before that I was interested in. So the Warriors ended up forcing 4 more turnovers than the Timberwolves in this one. So they kind of won the turnover battle. They won the rebounding battle by a pretty good margin. They had 6 more offensive rebounds, 10 total rebounds more. So that seems to be pretty important. And with any series, rebounds are obviously an important factor, but I think especially missing Steph, and then between 2 elite rebounding teams, like that's something that could be a pretty big tiebreaker factor type of thing in a close game, close series. And then the free throws were essentially a wash. They both shot around 15 or so, a similar percentage. But it's just they obviously the Warriors were able to withstand the injury in game 1. They took the hit. Draymond stepped up and hit his threes. Buddy's still feeling it. And I guess the question is how long is that going to last? Are they going to be able to ride Buddy's shooting much longer? He does kind of have these moments of like insane production, and then kind of no shows for a game or two, and then maybe he'll hit a 5 threes in the next game. So, that consistency without Steph, I think, is the biggest question: is can they score enough consistently against a great Timberwolves team without their best player, their best scorer, to win? At least they got one win here. But can they do it, 3 more times over a playoff series? I think is the big question.
Yeah, it is a big question. And I think it's going to go a long way towards determining how much of Steph's absence they can weather. The way I look at it is, I don't know if you've seen the schedule or not for this series, but It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it was like 1 day off in the first 5 games, or like it was every other day for like 5 games straight, or something like that.
Yeah, every other day for 5 games, and then they
That's wild.
have a 4-day break
Hmm.
until game 6, if there is one.
That is pretty weird.
It's weird. I mean, it's bizarre, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not like doing some like, the league's screwing us or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm sure it's
it cuts
because
both
of the Game
ways.
7 kind of like if their series didn't go 7 games, it would have had probably a little bit more break up front, but, that's kinda what you get with going letting a series go to Game 7 and not closing it out. You could add a little more rest before this series, but that's what happens if you take your time and
Yeah, like if we
mess
hadn't
around.
played like an extremely unserious game 5 and game 6 against Houston, then like we wouldn't be here. So like there's no real point in complaining over it. It is what it is. But my view on it is that if it's, a hamstring pull for Steph, if he, has like a grade 1 type deal where he's looking at about a week's absence, maybe, up to 10 days, then you're probably looking at a game 6 return. Maybe game 5 optimistically, but I'd say game 6. And then so the formula becomes, okay, we've got the 1. We got home court back. That's huge. Like we have the momentum. We have to not lose 4 in a row. Like all we need to do is scrape together 1 win over these next 4 games, because if it's 3-2, you get Steph back in Chase Center for game 6. You got to feel good about that. And then we all know just what this Warriors team does in game 7s on the road. They just come out ready. And Buddy is going to be a huge part of that equation because they need the scoring punch, but they need the defensive intensity too, the way he sets the tone there, because obviously, Draymond Green, Jimmy Butler, guys like Gary Payton, second, Kevon Looney, like you have guys that are going to be intense on the defensive end from the get-go. But when guys like Buddy, who do not have any sort of defensive reputation, are out there competing, they're sliding their feet in front of drives, they're getting over screens, that really helps set the tone, because it's like, oh, we're all locked in right now. And, the offense is going to be a struggle, but if he continues to hit his shots and he helps set his tone, then I feel confident that they can scrape together one of those games. And obviously the best case scenario is, finding a way to win this series without Steph, or, finding a way to maybe split what I think is going to be 4 games without him. Because if, you find a way to go up 3-2 going back home, Steph comes back in the lineup, feeling pretty good about that one. But Buddy's going to be a big key to this. And, the other key is going to be the other role players have to step up. We saw Brandon Pajemski had to shoulder a big load last night, and he couldn't really handle it. And he only had 3 points. He was 1 for 7 shooting. He made some good defensive plays as usual. I think that's kind of gone under the radar, is that he has a serious defensive floor now. With the way that he hustles on the ball, he's extremely good at the Warriors' funneling tactic. For those generally not familiar with how the Warriors try to run their defense, they don't focus on stopping you at the point of attack. They want to direct drives into the right areas so that Draymond Green can trap them, or that Kevon Looney can trap them. They want to funnel you into their preferred spots. And when you see it working, it's beautiful. And, I think a lot of people are saying like, oh, well, if the Wolves could just hit a 3, whatever. The reason they couldn't hit those 3s is because they're an excellent drive and kick team, and guys would drive and just fall into a trap. Like they would immediately just like, they'd have Draymond in front of them, but then they have a trail defender behind them, and suddenly you're on the baseline and you've got nowhere to go. And so you've got to kick it back out, and the team's rotating on a string. So you're swinging, but nothing's open. And then eventually you got to take a contested 3, or, someone less than ideal has to take that shot. And that's been extremely important because, we really saw a masterclass in their funneling last night, especially on Anthony Edwards, who is one of the most explosive drivers in the game. That intensity is going to need to continue. You're going to need to, if you get into like a back and forth kind of contest with this Wolves team where everyone's out and running and defenses aren't really getting set, it's just like semi-transition over and over again, you're going to lose. Without Steph, you don't stand a chance because this team is athletic, they're skilled, and they can make quick decisions. But if you grind them down, you make this a half-court game, and you make it really ugly, I like their chances. I also really like the quote from Steve Kerr last night where he talked about the importance of Jimmy Butler being sort of the captain of the half-court offense. And, the way they played it, it was like, they were up 20, early in that fourth quarter and just had that lead slowly being whittled away. They played it like a football team where their offense was just like, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And they're like, we don't really care if we're like moving the ball down the field as long as we're wasting time. And you saw so many possessions where they would take it down right to the end and be content to just like, kind of chuck something up there. They can count on Kevon Looney to create some second chances or their other guys crashing to contain. There was more than one time where they seemed pretty okay with taking a 24-second violation because they're like, we're still defending here. Like, we're still playing the defense. So, if we just kill, 24 seconds or 40 seconds if we get an offensive rebound, we're fine to do that because that just makes your job even harder. It's like, you're down 15 and we just wasted a whole 30 seconds. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, they're just running the clock out here, taking a knee. Just they're playing the full time management game, like you're saying, and that's a great point. That like you don't want to get in a shootout without Steph Curry on your side. Like you have the personnel to be in a rock fight, as you highlighted. Really, an elite defense, like led by a DPOY candidate and Draymond. Obviously, Jimmy has kind of revitalized himself and maybe re-energized the team. I think it just brings a lot of belief that it goes from like, do we have any shot at all to like, we actually have as much experience as anyone here in the playoffs, and we got as good a shot as anybody. Like, no one here has proven more than we have, and I think that belief just resonates with this team. And on the point with Buddy Hield earlier, like it's almost like they are trying to inspire irrational confidence on the defensive side because they know he has it offensively already, and that's like you can't say enough good things about irrational confidence in sports. Like you want your guys to think they are great at everything, and obviously you still want players to kind of accept and thrive in their role, but you still want to encourage them and have the belief that any of them could hit the biggest shot of the game at any time, and any of them can hold their own defensively and guard someone at any time. And if you continue to like preach that belief, you're going to get great effort out of a guy that's normally a turnstile. This is his first playoff experience ever, and it's partially because he's generally a regular season high volume shooter who doesn't bring a lot of defensive impact at his other stops, but he's always been a knockdown shooter. So with the post game kind of pep talk or whatever it was where Kerr kind of shouted out Buddy Hield for his defense after one of the games, I think that goes a long way to kind of inspire some confidence in a guy that you really need. And essentially like the swing factor of this whole team is, can they get a little more consistency on both ends from Buddy? And it's not something you want to be relying on, but he's essentially at full strength. They're at least their third option, and they don't really have another great option there where they're going to lean on someone else. But otherwise, to your point, there's just a lot of plus defenders on this team that when engaged, you're going to get a really tough defense. Like you can go down the whole roster essentially and find plus defenders. So I do think that that makes them successful. That like dynamic two-way versatility, flanking Steph with defense is always a good strategy. And if you don't have Steph, then well, you pretty much need that defense to pull out a rock fight for you. As you're saying, you don't want to get up and down with the younger, arguably deeper team that's full of a lot of offensive talent, a little of both, obviously, with Gobert and Jaden has shown he's pretty dynamic on both sides. But like you said earlier, I thought their ability to slow down and contain Anthony Edwards and even Julius Randle, both as scorers, and limiting them to 8 assists combined, that's pretty good for what you want from your team. As you say, to limit to trap them in the paint, to kind of limit their creation abilities because of the confusion and mayhem. And shout out Naz Reid, still getting his buckets off the bench. Like no one can do anything to slow down Naz Reid out here.
Yeah, fighting through an injury too. Like he clearly, hurt something. And yeah, he's a dog out there for sure.
Who do you think bounces back in this series? Like, if Steph's out for the next 4 games, who do you think kind of defines that stretch without him? Do you think that, Buddy just stays hot? Do you think maybe Anthony Edwards or Julius Randle kind of find their own groove as either a scorer or a playmaker? Like maybe it's Jaden Daniels who pops out, another dynamic scoring option who might not be super consistent as a 20-30 point game guy, but he can definitely go off for that on any given night with kind of his elusiveness. Is there any player that you think has, the advantage to break out the rest of the way this series?
Yeah, so I think the point to watch is going to be Anthony Edwards and his playmaking. And I know we're going to talk more about the Rockets-Warriors series, but going back on that and looking at the Lakers series as well. So when the Wolves beat the Lakers in their 4 total wins, Anthony Edwards had 9 assists, 8 assists, 6, and 8. In the one loss, he had 0. And it's no coincidence that they scored 85 points in that game. So that obviously his playmaking is key to this team regardless. One thing that has been kind of a staple of these Warriors teams is unless they're facing a truly spread offense with tons of different options, with tons of different ways to beat you, they're at their best when they're targeting a team where it's all top down, where it all comes from the skill of one player. And if that guy isn't scoring and playmaking, their offense is not going to work. And so when I look at these stats, if you go back to the Rockets series, in the 4 games that the Warriors won, Alperen Sengun scored 23 points per game, and he had 4 assists per game. In the 3 times that the Rockets won, he scored 18 a game, and he dished out 7 assists per game. And you can see it on the tape when you watch these games. Like, they were content to give him one-on-one matchups constantly. Like, if he could post up Draymond, Looney, he could post up Pods, Buddy Hield. They didn't really care. They were content to give him those looks. And a lot of that, I think, is because they didn't trust him to be a scorer. And, they're like, this is going to be a gritty series anyways. If we can, get one-on-one possessions where a guy takes a, 50, 60% 2-point shot without moving the ball, without involving the role players, while everyone else just kind of stands around, we're going to take that because it's a break for the defense. And we can cycle through who takes that matchup so no one is taking too much of the punishment. And I think we're going to see a lot of the same this series because Anthony Edwards, he had 23 points. He had 2 assists last night. He was not able to consistently make plays. It's different. It's not like they're just like, you know what, go one-on-one. We don't care. You can't do that against Anthony Edwards. He's just going to destroy you. But when they're locking his drives down the way that they can and cutting off of his passing options, you see everyone else struggle. Like you said, Randall was able to get his in a fair bit. Like, he got to the line a good amount. And Naz Reid, of course, was Naz Reid. But those are that's kind of their scoring trio right there. And then from the other 8 players who played in the rotation, they got a combined 28 points. They got 12 from Jaden McDaniels, but he shot 12 times. They got 9 from Rudy Gobert, which, is kind of about par for Rudy, but, you can't really knock him for that. That's what he is anyways. Dante, 7 points on 3 of 11. I know Terrence Shannon only played 2 minutes, but he was scoreless. And Mike Conley scoreless in 22 minutes. Like, they did not let the non-advantage creators get going in any way. And that's going to be, in my mind, the key to this series is how do the Warriors handle Ant's playmaking? Because, there are some guys I think who are going to need to step up. I mentioned Pajemski. Like, he's got a lot on his shoulders for how young he is, but they need him to step up. Obviously, Buddy's going to be big. They need Jimmy to be intense throughout the whole game. Like, we saw him lock in the fourth quarter, but there's been way too many times these playoffs where he just waits, and then he goes into closer mode. And, sometimes if you wait too long, the game just gets out of hand and you can't come in and close it and close the gap.
On that point, I do think it's kind of it's complementary, Jimmy and Steph, in the idea that Steph is notoriously a third quarter killer. Jimmy Butler is a fourth quarter killer. Like, you have complemented your second half scoring options for the clutch. But to your point, both of them sometimes just take their time in the first half. They pick their spots. They feel out the game. They don't really turn on kill mode until the second half starts. And so there are times where the Warriors find themselves in big deficits because Steph doesn't get his shot going and Jimmy's not looking for his. And now you're down 15 or 20 and just make it harder for yourself, even if you have probably the best third quarter and fourth quarter players in the entire league. So it's kind of a funny, just a little ironic, I guess, that you have solved the second half, but you still haven't figured out how to not go down 20 in the first half. And that's kind of how important Buddy could be too, is if Steph's shot isn't going and Jimmy's not looking for his, then you really do need Buddy to hit a few threes just to kind of keep them in range before the second half gets going. So you're not asking Steph to have to do throw down an avalanche to come back, or Jimmy to close a close game. So it is kind of an interesting dynamic how many different ways they complement each other. And then in just that one way where it's we still haven't figured out the first half, but we've nailed the second half of games.
Yeah. And that especially pertains to the offense, because we saw the first half last night, they were dialed in defensively from the start, and that did not let up for the whole game. So, they have the ability to sort of be more passive on offense and still find themselves up in games. I mean, we saw Steph before he went out, he looked really good. He was hitting his threes. He had a couple good drives. And he was able to, keep them ahead offensively while the defense just locked in. But we've seen this many times where they sort of, hang back and, they're content to just be ultra Steve Kerr egalitarian offense where it's everyone gets a turn and, sort of feel things out on the offensive end while the defense sets the tone. And, like you said, you have probably the best third quarter menace in history. And then you have one of the better fourth quarter crunch time guys in Jimmy Butler. So that gives you a massive advantage, provided that the game is close. And there's going to be nights in this series where you play some crazy defense and you're rotating on a string and you're forcing tough shots. And if there's any team that's built to just beat you with tough shots, it's a team with Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, and Naz Reid. Those are guys who can have someone right in their face and hit a three right in your eye. They can get going on a drive, absorb a ton of contact, and still make the shot. They're really good at drawing fouls. So there's going to be nights in the series where they come out with that intensity defensively and they're sort of, feeling things out on offense. And then suddenly the Wolves are up 15 in the second quarter. You're like, oh shit, well, we don't have Steph. I don't know if we have the scoring punch to get back into this one. That's going to happen.
That's the big one. They're out here floating like a butterfly, waiting to sting like a bee, like a boxer. They're dancing around, waiting for their time. And by the time it's time to start punching, it could be over. They might have lost too many points to the other team that way to that point. And, Obviously they have the defense handled. They got to figure out some of the offense. Last night it worked, but without Steph, I'm definitely interested to see like what's kind of funny is I really thought they would kind of win this series pretty handily with the way the Warriors kind of were rolling at their best, the way that they tend to have like good matchups against, Gobert teams as well. I don't really think Gobert is doing much to slow down Steph in this matchup when he's healthy. And they just have the defensive personnel to throw like Jimmy at Ant and Todd's at Ant and all these guards, Moses and Gary to throw different looks at Ant. Then you have Draymond matched up with Julius Randle. So to your point, like almost the idea that we're going to try to make your best scorer beat us one-on-one and try to contain everyone else and keep the kickouts away, not let you beat us by moving the ball, make one of your stars be a star the whole game. And normally it's only like a LeBron who can actually show up that way and win that way. So that's kind of a big dynamic to your point is can a Randall or Ant get going as a facilitator as much as a scorer? Because like you said with Sengun, like we can hit on this game 7 and the Rocket series a little bit. Like I do think Sengun was Houston's like most reliable option as an offensive hub. And obviously Fred VanVleet was hitting catch and shoot threes. So like in the games where he was able to kick out to him, that was a good flow. But the Rockets didn't seem to have much of an offensive identity outside of let's feed Sengun in the post or let's see if he can go face up and take someone one-on-one. And they got good looks at the rim pretty consistently, but like you said, like it's just hard to ask a player to do that consistently as a number one primary guy all game and not involve everyone else and ask him to beat them. And also like it was some of the big things that the Rockets did that I was interested in how the Warriors would try to adjust for game 7 was essentially the two big lineup was Steven Adams being an X factor where they would play Sengun at the 4, Adams at the 5, and they were dominating the rebounds. The Rockets were plus 30 with Sengun and Adams both on the floor, I believe heading into game 7. And the Warriors had lost 2 straight games. Like Fred VanVleet has kind of taken over the late game decision making, the tough 3-point shooting the last few games. And it looked like the Rockets had the momentum at that point. So I was interested in how they would adjust. And, I'm interested in what your thoughts are for the adjustments for that game 7. From what I saw, it was a little more Kevon Looney out there. Let's go to break the old reliable Looney, break the glass in case you need some Looney. Like he's been that old reliable guy, the big rim roller, defensive presence, that just a reliable big man for this team for a very long time. I think he made an impact just matching that size. And to your point, they kind of really focused on this Sengun thing where they just kind of let Sengun go one-on-one and hoped that they could outscore him that way. And of course, they got the offensive output they needed. Buddy Hield hits 9 threes, 33 points. His 9 threes tied the most in a game 7 in NBA history. And via Lev Akabas, his 33 points is the third most in an NBA game 7 by a player with 0 All-Star appearances. So quite literally one of the clutchest game 7s, especially by a non-star, in the entire history of the playoffs. Like there's no one that has matched that productivity. And the other players who did that are pretty, big names. Jamal Murray had 40 in 2020. CJ McCollum had 37 in 2019. And those are, viewed as star level guards who still were not all-star by the votes those years. So, pretty good company for a player like that. Obviously, they got Buddy lighting it up, and then Steph Curry closes it. Steph goes off in the 4th, 14 points, 101.7% true shooting percentage. Even though he missed a shot, he just breaks the true shooting scale in that 4th quarter. And he's just doing it in classic Steph ways. He's beating blitzes. They're blitzing him at the top of the key. He's hitting the short roller with Draymond that classic way. He hit Looney rolling to the rim. He was feeling it so much. He just Steph would just out dribble the double team. He's just like, I'll just take you for a ride around for a layup here around the entire court. And he even had 10 rebounds. So, I mean, Steph was pretty locked in there from all the way around, even though it took him a little bit to get going. And that's where having Buddy as a supplementary option can really keep them afloat until Steph just sees it go through the net once and then it's over. He's right back into dialed in. And I think that was the one where Steph had missed quite a few shots, but then he hits this like logo pull-up three over a double team right before halftime, and it's over. Like he starts clicking, he sees it go through the net. Steph's back to being Steph, and I kind of love that about him, where he just needs to see it once, and then he's back to being like Steph Curry.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that he was one shot away from nearly recreating the Game 7 in Houston, where he had 0 points in the first half and then 33 in the second half. Because that like you said, that pull up three like snake dribble off a pick and roll. That was his only basket in the first half, and it came with 30 seconds left on the clock. It was an incredible performance by Steph. I mean, that's nothing new. Just watching him dial in the fourth quarter and start going crazy, like you said, just breaking the true shooting scale because he's just absurd. I did not know that Buddy Hield stat either. That's crazy, especially considering that, like you said, Jamal Murray and CJ McCollum are like, that tier right below all-star level guys. I don't think anyone's ever like looked at Buddy Hield and been like, that could be an all-star.
Right.
Like, he's been a very good player, but I don't think anyone's ever put him in those conversations. So that's kind of just an all-time step up performance from him. I also like too that he scored 2.2 points per shot attempt.
Oh man,
it's just crazy. Like, just talk about just having everything on that night. But I think the big adjustment, like you said, with the Steven, like that was kind of what the Rockets unlocked. I think as much as the Warriors really came out flat in games 5 and 6 to kind of let the Rockets back into the series, that doesn't diminish how effective it was that they went into the zone and that they were able to go into the zone with two bigs who are not mobile. Like they had two big guys on the back line. They're doing this 2-1-2 zone, which I thought was really interesting because it was kind of daring. It was kind of like matchup zone in a way where like Steph would have someone trail with him, obviously, but anyone else they were content to just let roam around. That really hampers Jimmy because then you have two big guys on the block where he likes to be. And you've also stationed a player in the middle, like right below the nail. So if he gets those middle catches that are usually used to break a zone, those aren't as effective because then there's someone right in his face. There's potentially help coming over the top. So it's a really good way of limiting these Warriors players. And on top of that, they just dominated the glass with Steven Adams and Sengun. There were points where they had like 40, 45, 50% offensive rebounding rates for stretches. They were like, they won game 2 almost solely off just like, well, we're just going to like get it up. And then we're going to, if we miss, well, Steven's just going to grab it or Sengun's going to grab it. Or everyone's just going to get boxed out so heavily that our wings will be able to crash and grab it. And that was obviously killing them. The Rockets won the Steven Adams minutes all of the first 6 games, and then they lost it once in the most important game. And like you said, a lot of that is Kevon Looney. Build the statue, please. I'm so serious. He had a 27% defensive rebounding rate in his minutes on the floor. And that was huge because it really helped negate Steven Adams. Steven Adams only had a 7% offensive rebounding rate in that game. Obviously, he played a lot more minutes than Looney, and there were other times, but Looney was able to like 1v1 contain him on the glass and win that battle because he's so strong, because he's so technically good at boxing out. He's got such a way of like throwing his hip back into guys where it's like, guys are almost at like a V angle trying to like reach over him because his hip is going right into your hip. And so now you've got to like bend backwards at this awkward angle and try to reach over him and collect rebounds. And that's what lets, the other Warriors come in and grab the boards because like you said, Steph came in, grabbed 10, Jimmy Butler grabbed 8, Draymond 6, Moses Moody limited, 11 minutes, but he grabbed 3 boards as well. That was kind of the impressive thing for me was that they just so came together as a group to rebound the ball, but so much of that is keyed by Kevon because he's so good at boxing out. He's so physical. And, we saw like it was kind of the perfect series for him to step up because not only is he just going crazy on the defensive glass, but, when you can just oscillate him between Adams, who's kind of like a non-scoring threat unless he's getting putbacks or like wide open lobs, or Sengun, who's just going to try to post up. And, as I said earlier, the Warriors were comfortable letting him go one-on-one. He did not do well when posting up on Kevon Looney. Like, that is a tough matchup for him because Looney does not give ground. So, those like 5-foot hook shots are turning into 8 feet, 10 feet because he's just not getting the kind of back down that he wants. And that was extremely important. I can't say enough about Kevon in that series. And, he's going to be big for this one too. Like last night, he comes out 14 minutes, he grabs 6 boards. And, there are going to be times where, like the Wolves went to it in the fourth quarter when the Warriors were going small. Draymond had 5 fouls, I believe. Like he got 2 really quick fouls and they had to bench him for a stretch. And that was right after Gobert posted up on him. Like they cleared everyone out. Gobert posts up. He takes like 2 dribbles. Draymond, obviously 5 fouls. Like he's not going to do anything. So Gobert just, 2 dribble, turn around and dunk. They take Draymond out. They put Looney in and suddenly Gobert is gone. Like just erased from the game because it's like, well, now he can't post up. Now he can't make an impact on the offensive glass. And on the other end, he's got this really physical rebounder getting into him. So he's got so much to worry about because one of the best offensive rebounders in basketball is trying to work around him, trying to create extra possessions. So I thought that was a huge, huge point of that Rockets series was the hustle and the play of Kevon Looney to help negate Steven Adams because it was cool to watch. Like it was just, from like a 30,000 foot view, that series stylistically, where you have like ultra small ball movement, balls flying around, you got shooters all over the floor. And then you got the Rockets who would run like double bigs, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, and like Fred VanVleet. And you're just like, you've got guys who would be like 4s on every single other team. Like without question, these guys are playing the 4 on every team, and they're playing like the 2 and the 3. They just went uber size, and it worked for so many stretches. Obviously that series just really came down to the wire, and that I think was fun to see because, there's this sort of prevailing like, oh, everybody just plays the same now, and it's, drive, kick, swing, shoot a 3. Like you're kidding yourself if you still think that and you watched any part of this series.
Right.
It's just like, here's 2 complete non-shooting bigs. They're just trying to out-muscle everybody. They're playing volleyball with the rim, trying to get these second chance opportunities. They're playing zone. It was a really fun stylistic clash. And one more thing on that Rocket series too, Amen Thompson is
gotta give him a shout.
I mean, I knew, I'd watched my fair amount of Rockets games throughout the year, so he always caught my eye. I was like, this guy has such impressive defense. Like the way he moves athletically is unbelievable. I was not prepared for so many of the different ways he could attack. There were some games where they're like, we're putting a big on you, we're giving you like the floaters, and he played right into their hand. But I mean, young guy, like he sees an open shot in the paint, he's probably going to take it. Game 7, like he almost single-handedly brought them back into that game. Like the third quarter, he just completely took over. He was everywhere defensively. He was getting out in transition. He had that unbelievable behind the back drive into.
Oh man, that was the one.
Reverse. Dude, that was just crazy.
I had to back it up because I heard the announcer be like, I've never seen that before, and I'm like, what did I miss? Because I think it came right after right after Steph hit a really tough pull-up three. So I was like writing a quick note on that. And before I had time to write it, Amen had already gone flying down the field for this like reverse layup, picking the ball up from like, I don't know, the elbow going downhill with like a little Euro reverse that you just never see that like level of athleticism and then touch to be able to like have the body control, move like that through space with the behind the back handle to actually like control it and finish that. I mean, come on, just yeah, I'm glad you shouted out Amen Thompson. That was my next thought too, was just got to shout him out as like clearly an impact guy, like one of a kind athlete, incredible defender, high flying, can get and at his best when he gets downhill and puts his point guard hat on and starts to kind of bend the defense and start to kick out, and obviously can continue to improve as a scorer and shooter, but like what's there already is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's the thing for me that stood out is when I had watched him before, I kind of thought, okay, here is an incredible play finisher. Not only in the sense of like, oh, he cuts really well or he gets on the offensive glass, he does all these things. Like someone else could create an advantage and he could swing it along. He could find the right passes, which is a really important skill. Like you don't necessarily always have like, obviously people place their value in the primary creator, but the guy who can take advantage of a tilted defense and find the right passes to his teammates is also extremely valuable. And I'd always kind of seen that in him. This series really popped for me where I was just like, man, he just gets into this mode where he has so many different ways of beating you. Like one of the most not only that, but that drive we were talking about, he had one play where I forget who shoots it, like ball goes up, comes off the rim. There's like two Warriors on either side of him trying to crowd him and get the defensive rebound. And he just reaches out with his left hand and just flicked the ball up into the air and banked it off the glass to get it to go. It was just ridiculous. I mean, like the pure coordination that he has to go with this athleticism is what really stood out to me. And I mean, I could just, talk about like the guy's potential for days, but when you're talking about a guy who's already he just turned 22, he's already one of the elite perimeter defenders in this league. He's already an incredible rebounder. He creates, stocks with just about any wing. Like there aren't really any guys who can match like getting, a steal and a block and a half per game, which is already just crazy. And you start to think of the possibilities where you're just like, if he just if he starts to level up the mid-range scoring, if he becomes that better drive and kick guy, if he becomes even a passable pull-up shooter where, like if he can have like effective drives where it's like, oh, you're trying to go under on him and he's shooting like 33% and he at least has to like make you think about a pull-up a little bit. Man, he just has potential to be so special and so unique. And I can't say enough about how cool he is. He really he stands out to me as someone where I'm like, this is going to be one of the most fun watches in the league. I also don't think I've ever been more scared for watching an opposing player get hurt. Because he, like you saw, he pulled that calf, like 2 different times. I mean, I don't know if it was like quite a pull or a cramp, but like he comes down hard on a drive in the third quarter. He's kind of, grabbing at it. He had to come out of the game for a bit, and then he's guarding Steph, and he pull like it kind of cramps again, and Steph gets a clean pull up 3 because Amon's too busy limping. I was like mortified. I was like, please do not be anything related to his Achilles. Like, I cannot imagine anything more devastating than like the coolest run and jump athlete I've ever seen having an Achilles injury. I was so scared, and I'm so glad he's okay, because I was just like, please no. Like, I want to watch this guy do ludicrous things for the next decade.
Right. No one wants to see that athleticism fade even a minute. And I had can definitely see like Amen Thompson is electric out there. He's flying around like he's so athletic that it kind of like it's impressive how much he impacts a game. When I think a lot of people also agree, like he can fine tune his game a lot still, and he just has this athletic base that is just off the charts that makes him arguably the best athlete in the NBA. Like it's pretty amazing when you see a guy that is clearly more athletic than like the 200 most athletic people in the world, give or take, at a given time, at least when it comes to basketball. So you got to shout out Amen Thompson. Obviously, we need him to go to some landing school for all these high flying jumps, because obviously that is the thing, especially more so for like explosive guards like a D Rose or a John Morant. You just want to see them land the right way with all these high flying acrobatic jumps, because you never know. I mean, it only takes one, and no one wants to see any of that athleticism zapped, because just a one of a kind player. And also just little things that just pop out. Like he had one play where like he basically just whiffed a layup and the ball could have gone anywhere, but before anyone has a chance to react, he's already planted and had his second jump to just immediately put it back in for a dunk. And it's like, how did that happen so quick? Like, I've long said that like an Aaron Gordon or Zion Williamson have the quickest second jump in the league, but Amen's coming for the crown. Like he was just immediately explosive for something like that, and he just flies around. You want to see him kind of fine tune his game, because I think he has that uber athleticism. Second Iguodala kind of reference on the pod. I think he has a little Iggy to his game as like a defensive ace, downhill playmaker who ideally eventually can be something of a scorer and 3-point shooter. And obviously everyone wants these uber athletes to also be able to shoot. But like there are very few perfect basketball players out in the game, and maybe it's the basketball gods' way of saying like, yeah, you can do all these things at the best level in the world, but if we give you a 3-point shot too, like that's gonna be unfair for everyone. It's like even Shaq is gonna have his Achilles heel at the free throw line. Like you just very rarely have a player that is just flawless, and that's kind of how we view like these developmental cycles, where like instead of appreciating Amen for being this high flying athlete who's an incredible playmaking defender, can already pass and shoot a little bit, it becomes like, but can he actually start or be a number one scoring option? It's like just kind of appreciate what he's doing so well. And maybe Giannis doesn't need a 3-point shot to be the best player in the league. Like that's kind of what I'm getting at here. And also on Sengun, I looked it up while we were chatting here, some of the matchup data that the NBA website has from the series. It looks like, Draymond gave him some real trouble. Like Draymond guarded Sengun the most, 40 minutes over the series, and he held him to 39% as a scorer, 23 of 59, with a 10 assist to 7 turnover ratio. So to your point, he was barely, he only has 3 more assists to turnovers over the whole series, 10 to 7, and shooting below 40% anytime he got matched up with Draymond. So they're pretty happy letting Sengun go one-on-one with Draymond with results like that. And he was more effective against Jimmy Butler. He scored 69% on 13 shots against Jimmy, and also against Pods, he had 54% on 13 shots against Pods. So it looks like Sengun, when he had a little bit of a height advantage, was able to take advantage of that, but it was only 26 total shots compared to 59 against Draymond and another 30 against Orlando Golden State's other bigs. Looney, as you say, when Sengun was matched up with Looney, only 7 of 16, 44%. I would say a little below average. Against Post, only 6 of 15, 40%, even lower. Against both of those combined, 12 assists to 4 turnovers. So still a solid ratio there, but they were able to force some turnovers as well. And then against Buddy, he was actually only 18% on 11 shots, 80% against Steph. So, Buddy actually held his own against Sengun, and that's part of the reason why he was probably praised for his defense. Was Sengun only went 2 of 11 against him, but for the most part, Draymond and the bigs and then Buddy being matched up with Sengun actually was not a very efficient look for the Rockets offense, even when that was really the only like trustworthy, reliable scorer or creator they could hand the ball to, knowing that Jalen Green is a little sporadic when it comes to his scoring, and it's either kind of letting Fred VanVleet run the show, or run things through Sengun, your hub. And as we've pointed out here, forcing Sengun to be more of a scorer against tough defenders was probably their best plan for success, and it finally kind of pulled out in Game 7 by. I think the Warriors also kind of threw their own zone defense against the Rockets there in Game 7 that maybe they didn't see coming. I don't think there was much of that. Of course, he ended up playing Kuminga too for a whole minute and a half. He stayed true to his word that everything is on the table. But that's not really unless Steph's out, maybe they will have to go back to him. But I don't see him being much of an X factor in the rest of the series. But just wanted to highlight kind of that. On the one hand, it felt like the Rockets' only option for offense was out of Sengun in the post. Hopefully he scores or finds Fred VanVleet or a shooter on the perimeter. And more often than not, the Warriors held their own defensively, especially throwing bigs at him in that way. And it just wasn't enough. I think the Rockets are prime for a consolidation trade this summer to help fine-tune this offense. They have a ton of prospects. Arguably franchise cornerstone type guy in Sengun at the very least offensively, and then Amen Thompson and Tari Eason defensively. Jabari is still like a very high level two-way impact player. And to your point about different styles, clashing styles, I think it is cool to see kind of the Rockets go big, like ultra big against the Warriors small ball. They steal a few games that way, and then the Warriors just kind of adjust and they get a little bigger, they get a little tougher down low, and they kind of focus in on what they're going to take away and kind of take away what you want and force them to beat them how they want to play. So, credit to Steve Kerr and the staff and the players kind of adjusting and being able to hold their own in the big Game 7 where, no one I don't think was betting against Steph Curry in a Game 7 against the Houston Rockets. I think that has historically been probably the worst bet you could make.
It's not a good one. Yeah, he knows how to lock in for those. And yeah, that the point on the Rockets too, like you said, the Sengun, I think we kind of have this tendency to just like, the Rockets, they built this up, like incredible season, 52 wins. They get to the playoffs. They lose to like the preeminent winning franchise over the last decade. Yeah, I know that they're old or whatever. There's no shame in losing to the Warriors in a very close series. And yeah, like there were flaws on display. We saw that the half court offense was really brutal at times. We saw that they just didn't have enough guys who could self-create. We saw, frankly, the only player I came away with being like, yeah, this kind of confirms my suspicions is Jalen Green. I was just like, he's just not reliable in this kind of setting. Other than that, like we said, Amen is one of those guys. Sengun, when he's scoring and playmaking, he's an extremely valuable piece. I think we saw too this year. He really stepped it up defensively. So like, are there moves to be made here? Yeah, for sure. Like, I think there are definite steps that they can take to further this. But people like see these kind of games and they go, well, it's like a referendum on, well, is Sengun really the guy you can build around? And like, do they need to just go get Kevin Durant? Do they need to just like trade Sengun for Giannis? And it's like, well, like they just got here. Let's just, why don't we give it a second to breathe and, see what happens? And I'm also a proponent of like, hey, windows are always shorter than you think they are because, someone gets hurt, someone drops off, you got to pay too many guys and suddenly your depth's gone. Like there are a lot of ways it can go wrong, but I don't see the urgency with this Rockets team the way other people do. Like if there's a clear upgrade out there that they can make for, a couple of picks, if it's like, hey, Dylan Brooks, thanks for the memories, but like we can get Cam Johnson in the door. If it's moves like that, then I get it. I don't understand the need to say, oh, well, they got to go make some huge star swing because they have two. Like they have Amen and Sengun who are going to be incredible players for many years to come in this league. And you can't panic your way out of that, in my opinion. Like like you said, yes, they have flaws, but everyone just jumps right to the flaws and they just skip right over all of the things that make them so good. And, Sengun, like if he stays healthy and continues to refine his game, he's a guy who's going to be averaging like 20, 10, and 5 for the next decade. Amen Thompson is so good. He's going to be in contention for, depoys. He's going to make first team all defense. I think we've seen with his level of athleticism and touch, he's going to keep getting better offensively. As much like I can, I can take the armor off. I can put the sword down. We've done enough torment of the Houston Rockets. Like, that is 5 series wins in the last 10 years. Like, flip a coin for a Rockets season over the last decade, and chances are even you're gonna land on a series that we ended. That's ruthless. I'm done. Like, we're good. I can rest now.
I don't know if there's been as much dominance for one team over another that you can't really call a rivalry because the other team has to win one for it to be a rivalry. It's just kind of like a great matchup that has produced great series that always seem to end one way. I really don't know off the top of my head any team that has dominated another like this. It's almost like, Jordan being so great that they don't remember Clyde Drexler as also one of the greats because of how many times Steph has come out on top, and a guy like Harden has kind of lost directly in those matchups. So that's something, and they weren't even like knocking them out 5 times in the playoffs. That was just general like shooting guard talks, I guess, back then. So yeah, it's got to be tough to be a Rockets fan, and the way you think about Steph Curry. I mean, just the ultimate killer, ripping your heart out for literally a decade there. And yeah, on the team building aspects, I agree that there are obviously kind of like a couple different ways you could go about it. I think it's kind of similar to where Orlando is in as well, where they have this elite defense. They have a lot of young depth. They have some guys they view as stars, and you want to do multiple things at once. You want to compete as soon as possible because, as you say, windows are not as long as you might think. There's Magic fans know very well that your star player could get disgruntled and demand out or just leave at any point. So there is always that in the back of their mind that they want to keep Paolo and Franz happy and they want the team to stay competitive. And I totally agree that the moment you start coming up with all these fake trades, you're kind of forgetting like what got them to this point in the first place, which is their elite defense and their depth. Now, on Houston's side, I do think they have enough extra good players around that they could come up with a consolidation trade and bring in a star without giving up Sengun, Amen Thompson, or even ideally try to keep Tari and Jabari there as well. I mean, maybe even Reed Shepard with his shooting. I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting prospects here. You got Cam Whitmore there. Like the trade for me, if I was them, is trying to see if you can turn Jalen Green and a handful of these veterans or lesser young prospects or picks for a more reliable star. Like, is there an upgrade there for Devin Booker that you just throw everything extra to bring him in? Are they willing to break that up? Or even a Durant or Giannis, but again, like you'd have to give up probably an Amen Thompson to get one of those guys. Maybe you could get away with Jalen Green, 3 or 4 first rounders, and a couple of the younger prospects that might not be as part of this team as much of the team identity, like a Whitmore or a Reed Shepard, and that brings in a Devin Booker who helps you compete now. But really, what it comes down to is like, are you ready to go all in on we are contending today now, and we're not really worried as much about the future? The Warriors were in that mode. They needed a guy like Jimmy to come in and help compete right now, and it worked. The Magic and Rockets are pretty early in their timeline. Their stars are young. Their defense is reliable. Those things should be there for the foreseeable future. Both of these teams should have their young stars playing well, if not improving, and their defense as reliable things they can count on for the next 3 to 5 years as long as everyone's happy. So I think building out from the core while maintaining the defense is what's most important for both of these teams to try to become a contender as quickly as possible without, as you say, sacrificing what got them here on the way up. Because trading away an elite defense to become an elite offense might not work as well as you think in terms of making them actually any better at contending. It might just make them just as competitive, but better at different things. So trying to maintain that two-way balance, keep the core young stars in place, keep the elite defense, but using the extra trade pieces to kind of carve out a rotation and a reliable offense, I think, is ultimately like the key for these teams. Because I think both of these teams would love, for example, a big consolidation trade for a star like Devin Booker. I think he's like the ultimate prize type of guy for either of these teams. And you could also maybe say Trae Young or LaMelo Ball in different areas. There are other names that have kind of popped around that could fit there as well. Maybe Zach LaVine becomes available. We've seen Anthony Simons and Kobe White are other names. These are a lot of names linked to the Magic more so. But, I think the offensive help, really carving out an offensive identity is what's most important for both of these teams. And you already have the stars in place, so it's at least some of them. So it's really about finding that balance with your stars without sacrificing what makes you so great.
Yep. I mean, that's always the kind of thing you got to balance is, if you were to, if, Devin Booker presents himself and you can do it without parting with Amen, Sengun, if you're able to get that deal done without breaking the bank, so to speak, yeah, you do it. It's
Do you
doable.
think Jalen Green, all the first round picks you want, and some of the lesser prospects is enough for a Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd, Jalen Green, and 3 or 4 first-round picks? Or do you think the Suns are sticking pretty hard on, no, we're going to need one of Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Jabari Parker, or Jabari Smith, shout out Jabari Parker, and vice versa for Orlando? Like, I think Orlando's kind of stuck on, we really want to keep Suggs and Anthony Black no matter what we do to build out from there, while other teams are going to say, we're not giving up a star unless we get one of those guys back, even if your consolidation trade of everything else is still pretty good. I do think that Orlando and Houston, like most teams, prioritize their young marquee prospects like an Amen Thompson or an Anthony Black more so than they do these extra first-round picks. I think they'd rather give up 2 or 3 first-round picks rather than the known quantity of the good young player that they already know is very good at certain things.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Phoenix is going to ask for some of these guys. It's a non-starter when you get to Amen and Sengun for me. I think, there are conversations to be had if it's like, well, Jabari is going to need an extension. And even though that's, more like a role player type extension, it's still going to cost you. There are conversations to be had for sure. I think the question is it, assuming Kevin Durant is gone, because that kind of seems like a foregone conclusion that he's going somewhere. Is Phoenix looking at this like, look, we've already dug the hole really deep. KD helps us get something back, but we still have a star in Devin Booker. Bradley Beal is here for better or worse. Like it's kind of we maybe don't have a choice, but to try and be competitive. Do they view it as that, or do they view it as, like, we really blew it, it's time to just get real and rip this thing down to the studs? And if so, of all the teams that are available to take on these kind of players, unless, Oklahoma City suddenly jumps into the mix for a Devin Booker kind of player, there's no one who can match the just sheer volume of picks that Houston has, because they own a lot of those Brooklyn picks. I believe they also own one of Phoenix's picks. There was that weird 3-team deal with them and Brooklyn and Phoenix where they like got one of Phoenix's picks. So they can kind of dangle that over their head and be like, hey, if you want to get one of your picks back plus a whole bunch of other assets, we can do that.
Yeah. And that's more valuable to teams than a general first-round pick. They would all very much rather control their own first-round pick if possible. They value that a little bit more, just to have that control. And Brooklyn, San Antonio, Orlando to a lesser degree come to mind as well as some potential trade destinations that they have either picks or a collection of young players. And Houston has probably the best collection of both.
Yeah, and that's where I thought, you know, like on a different note, you know, just on the getting their own picks back, there's been a lot of trade speculation about Giannis.
Yeah.
And
I'm about to ask you, Giannis, Durant, Booker, where are they playing next year?
yeah, and you know, my gut tells me that two of those guys aren't going anywhere. I think KD's the only one on the move. You know, Giannis, he's got the MVPs, he's got the trophy, like guys like that, you know, he's got a chance to be like the certified Mr. Milwaukee Buck, which is pretty incredible. Like I know Kareem only played there for like 6 years, but he was the guy. So like the fact that you've got a chance to like really stamp yourself as the franchise legend means a lot to guys, I think. You know, once you've gotten the ring, once you've gotten the MVPs, all the other accolades, it's kind of just about like where your standing ends up. And if you can be like the guy for a 60-year-old franchise, that's important. Ultimately,
and they're
I don't
still
think
trying to pay him. Like it's not a D-Wade situation where the team is like actively screwing him over, his legacy over, while trying to negotiate. Like the Bucks have gone above and beyond to do everything every year, it seems, to make Giannis happy. And you know, maybe it
like
doesn't always add up to actually success doing exactly what he wants. It probably has to be a little bit more, maybe give and take of your front office building out a plan. But I don't know. But it feels like they are trying to like make Giannis happy with moves, but it's hard to tell if that's actually working.
Yeah, and you know, it's dubious that it is working, but I think part of it too is like we've gotten a lot of credible reports that Giannis is kind of like calling the shots in terms of coaching decisions. You know, like he's gotten to that point where it's like we don't make any big moves without my say so. So
I mean, new coach, they've traded Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton in the last 2 years. They deconstructed a championship team, not overnight, but pretty dang quickly.
Yeah, they did. And, you know, obviously the Damian Lillard thing has gone about as badly as it could because, you know, they just never got on the right page. And then, you know, tearing his Achilles, that's just devastating. It is similar to how I feel about Jokic. And, you know, like Jokic, smaller market, he already got his championship. He's got all his MVPs. The team can't spend the way that other teams can, but you don't like, you know, if Giannis were to, you know, say cave to the whims of every Lakers Instagram account or whatever and like force his way to Los Angeles, you know, LeBron James is there. LeBron James has the power. Luka Doncic is 5 years younger. He has the power. And then on top of that, the Lakers are like a bit more strong-armed. You know, I mean, obviously they cave to a guy like LeBron, but you know, you're going to walk in, you're just going to be one on a long list of all-time Lakers. You're not going to have the say-so over who coaches you, what other players play with you. And then you're not going to be like, you know, the first option. Like, would he have a better chance at winning another title? Sure. But there's so many other things that come with being the guy that I think Giannis kind of gets to enjoy right now. And, you know, it's kind of similar to how, I mean, to a lesser degree, it's how I feel about Devin Booker because, you know, there's no question, like they're paying him. Like they're going to pay him. He's done some pretty incredible stuff in Phoenix. I mean, I know he came short in the championship, but like, you know, the fact that he went from guy on a perennially tanking team, like, you know, late lottery pick, to becoming an all-star, to becoming an all-NBA level guy, to pushing this team to the finals for the first time in like 30 years. he's already like kind of cemented his legacy as an all-time Suns great, even without the title, even without being like an MVP level guy. So, then it just becomes the question of like, well, do I want to go elsewhere and sacrifice some of that power, some of that standing for the better chance at getting that championship? And ultimately, I think for most of these guys, the answer is no, because, like you said, unless it's like a Dwayne Wade situation where it's like, hey, not only are we not fielding a competitive team, we also don't want to pay you what you're worth.
Right.
Then you see what happens to Jimmy. Like, I think, if Jimmy Butler had been given a contract extension, he would have been playing play-in basketball and he would have been eliminated from the playoffs. And like the Warriors might not even be in the playoffs, but Pat Riley didn't want to play him. And now the Warriors are up a game in the conference semifinals and the Heat are in the lottery. Like that's it's just kind of the way it goes if you don't want to pay your guys. It's funny that here we have a through line of just like Pat Riley refusing to
Hey, aging stars.
Yeah, aging stars. Like, but yeah, I ultimately think that they stay. But the one thing I would keep an eye on is if the Bucks if Giannis does go to them and say, hey, like, we had a great run, things really didn't break our way, it's time for me to move on. One team that I would keep an eye on getting involved as the third team in the deal is the New Orleans Pelicans, because they own all of those Bucks picks from the Drew Holiday trade. Those are about to come due. And, if you trade Giannis and Dame is out for next year, odds are you're probably not going to be very good. I mean, yeah, like it's the Eastern Conference, they could still find a way to be in like the late playoff mix if you get the right guys. But if the Pelicans were to be the team involved, where, whoever acquires Giannis is then sending picks to the Pelicans, and the Pelicans are sending the Bucks picks back to Milwaukee, and potentially sending Zion Williamson up north. That's when I think things get really interesting, because, I think one of the interesting stories to me is like, I understand why Zion is kind of out of people's minds collectively, but he is still 24 years old. When he's on, he's one of the most dominant offensive forces in this league. Like that play-in game against the Lakers was one of the most, like from last year, was one of the most eye-opening single game takeovers I've seen from a guy, where I'm just like, oh, if he's really firing on all cylinders, there's nothing you can do about him. And
He
yeah,
draws
there's
the most. Sorry to interrupt. He draws the most fouls, the most double teams of any player in the league since he's entered the league by far. No one draws as many doubles as Zion, because to your point, you can't stop him with one human being. You need two.
Yeah, it's just impossible. Like, there's no defender on earth who can match Zion's speed in a straight line, his quickness, the way he gets into his spin moves, the way he gets up into his finishes. And then on top of that, he's just built like a freight train. I mean, he's like,
right.
Like 6'6", 270, I think. And this isn't even like a weight joke. Like when he's at like a healthy weight, he's gigantic. Like he's just naturally built massively.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you're a team like Milwaukee and you're faced with the prospect of, well, our best player in franchise history has to leave, like we don't really have a choice, we want to honor his request, I don't think there's really any better way you could retool than getting a 24-year-old who has proven he can be a star when he's on the court. You get some of your own picks back. And I think the other thing with Zion, it was kind of why I was on the Zion to the Warriors train. Like before the Jimmy Butler, I mean, now it's kind of out of the question salary wise. When they gave him his extension, it's built in with a bunch of non-guarantees. Like if Zion becomes such a problem with conditioning or injuries or whatever off court you want to do, you can just cut him. Like you can't say that for any other max contract player. Like if you trade for a max guy and he's a problem, like performance wise, off court, whatever, you're just kind of stuck. And Zion, if you trade for him, you take the gamble, it doesn't work. You cut him, you open up the cap sheet, you have your own picks. It's an interesting thing to think about because obviously, the Pelicans are not like, what do they win, like 20 games last year? Didn't he have injuries? Like, is Giannis going to ask out to go to the Pelicans? Of course not. But I think they're going to be the team that would provide the majority of the assets going to Milwaukee if this trade does materialize.
Yeah, there's something there for sure. I mean, we've already hit on how teams prioritize their own first, especially when you're about to bottom out, losing your star players. Like, this is a no-brainer. It's a fun hypothetical. I think I saw something around that idea of a trade rumor floating around online that there you could see a little 3-team trade, and it keeps the Bucks relevant with Zion. To your point, if something goes badly off the court or for some reason you need to move on, they would still have their picks and in theory be able to just cut them if there was something to that level of a distraction. And obviously, there has been some turmoil there with him and the Pelicans group. Hard to say from the outside kind of what exactly is going on behind the scenes. But like you say, when he's actually healthy and available, guy's good for like 25 points a game on uber efficiency, drawing 7 or 8 free throws a game. He's getting to the rim at will. Downhill, he's impossible to stop. Face up, he's impossible to stop. Like he's just a tank that does what he wants, and like we said, can draw doubles, draw fouls, literally as well, if not better, than any other player in the league. So it is an incredible talent. Only 24, as you said, like that. He's clearly a star. Like when he's healthy, and to me, it's worth the trade off. Just like a Joel Embiid or a Kawhi Leonard are worth the trade off. Where they might not play half the time, but when they're out there, there's nothing anyone can do about it, and they're top 20, top 30 level impact guys, if not top 10, top 15 when they're actually healthy. So that's just kind of the trade off you put up with a talent like that, and I think it's definitely interesting. And I want to say Giannis has said, or at least rumors have come out about Giannis' preferences for, say, a Houston or a Brooklyn as a landing spot. So maybe you see something of a 3-team trade there. I definitely agree. Durant is all but gone. Is really hard for me to see the Suns' new owner just like punting on being good and going from like all of this confidence bravado talk to just like, yeah, it didn't work, my bad, we're going to restart from scratch. There's just been a little too much all in from his part to see them tear it down. So I agree. I do think that they'll try to like retool around Devin Booker, who probably wants to be a Sun for life, just like Giannis probably wants to be a Buck for life. But at the end of the day, they also want to win. So if, like Damian Lillard, like what's his reward for being loyal? Like he got shipped to a team he didn't want to play for at the end of his prime, and it didn't quite work, and now he's injured for who knows how long, and who knows if he'll recover 100% at this age. Like it didn't really go his way. Like Damian didn't really get rewarded for his loyalty to the franchise the way that you might have wanted that to kind of turn out. So it's a two-way street, and as fans, we want to see it. We want to see Giannis. It's great seeing one guy like a Steph Curry be with the Warriors, Kobe with the Lakers, their entire career. You associate their names with the teams. It's just a cooler story, especially when they're drafted by that team, especially when you're a fan of that team. There's just nothing like seeing a homegrown draft pick become a star, become a champion for the team that you root for, the city that you rep. It's just an all-time glory. Dirk is a legend forever in Dallas for this reason, and it's something Luka wanted to do in Dallas and didn't get the chance to, and appropriately he's upset about that. So I do think Giannis and Booker want that to stay, but I don't know how many more seasons Giannis can take of this kind of hit, just running into the same wall. Like it's been a lot of disappointment since that championship run, partly due to injuries. I also think partly due to the roster changes they've made. Like they lost a little bit of their elite defensive identity. But, on paper, if you tell me you're getting Damian Lillard to pair with Giannis, I'd be pretty hyped about that combination, especially in pick and roll, given their strengths are pick and roll. Like it just seems like a match made in heaven on paper. So I think that's a gamble most teams would take. But as we hit on before, you trade your best defenders to bring in some offense, and suddenly it shouldn't be a surprise that you're not as elite of a defensive team when you give up arguably the best guard defender of the last decade in Drew Holiday, and then Chris Middleton, who's been a very reliable D&3 pull up midi scoring option for this team for years. It was surprised to see him get dealt for such a low price tag at the deadline. Like that didn't really add up to me. But having an off season and being in win now mode will lead to decisions like that, and we'll see how it pans out. But I do think Booker and Giannis probably end up staying put. I think I agree with that. But there's enough noise here with both of them where the right offer and just kind of one day where they wake up and think maybe I'd be better off elsewhere is all it really takes for something that big to go through. So definitely hyped to kind of see how it plays out, see where Durant ends up. It does seem like he's on his way out, and we'll probably be able to pick his next team. The Spurs are just such a crazy wild card that they added D Fox, they have Wemby, and they still have all these picks and prospects where they could go out and get a Giannis, a Durant, someone like legit star that obviously will want to play there. So that's the big wild card team is, can they form a super team with all of their picks and prospects that, maybe they already have 2 stars in place. Who's to say they can't go out and get a third?
Yeah, it would be scary imagining that. Like
Giannis
once
with Wemby stretching the floor, the pick and pop with Giannis and Wemby.
Yeah, what do you do when it's like you have a 7'4" guy who can shoot the cover off the ball from up to like 30 feet?
It's officially alien basketball.
Oh God, that would be something else. But yeah, before I gotta head out of here, I think lock it in. Like I think Durant's moving. I think Giannis is staying. And a quick, circling back on Warriors Wolves, I've fully come around to Dubs and 7 once again.
Hey.
I think we're getting the Steph return. I think they're just going to be able to like be a stick in the mud long enough to survive for him to come back. And then they're just going to win out on the road, and we'll see. Because at this point, like the Cavs are on the ropes. The Celtics are having a tough time. Who knows what's going to happen with Thunder Nuggets? So I've fully, like my hand is off the wheel. I'm letting the car drive itself. We're just seeing what happens at this point. I have no clue anymore what's going to go down.
Jesus, take the wheel. We gotta bring this one home somehow, some way. But yeah, man, appreciate you hopping on, learning basketball, talk a little Golden State Warriors. I'll put together this as a podcast soon enough here on Apple and Spotify and YouTube, and should be able to edit it in with our Nuggets thoughts as well on Game 1, so the listeners can get a little bit of everything on this past weekend and last couple of days worth of games. But super interesting to see where it all goes out. I agree. I still would favorite the Warriors in this series, assuming Steph doesn't miss too much time. But without Steph, man, this is gonna be a rock fight. Like we've been saying, either the T-Wolves kind of explode offensively and turn it into just a run and gun shootout where that seems to favor them, or the Warriors kind of keep it a rock fight where Buddy gets some scoring going. Draymond, one last shout out to him. He's been super aggressive offensively that I think he doesn't always bring to the table, but he has shown like an extra gear of driving, attacking the rim, looking for his shot, knowing that they need a little offensive firepower. And to his credit, I do think he's been the best defender in the league since the Jimmy trade. I'm glad Evan Mobley, or even if Jaren had got it, or a couple other names like Amen, I'm glad Evan Mobley got the Defensive Player of the Year award to credit this Cavs season and credit his development and the leap he made for the full season. But shout out Draymond, man. Like he's a one-man defensive anchor. He's surrounded by all these plus defenders. He can lock down anyone you got. His instincts and hands are, as good or better than any defender we've seen before. His ability to just stop drives and throw his hand out to contain like someone that's much taller or smaller than him driving by. It doesn't matter. Like just one of a kind, generational defender. So wanted to give one last little shout to Draymond because I think like him being that defensive anchor flanked by intensity of defense around him is how the Warriors kind of pull this out without Steph.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be exciting to see how this one plays out. I think we're in for another rock fight like we had in Warriors Rockets, but
Gotta live.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
We'll have to circle back on that one after. But yeah, always a treat being on, man. Always good talking hoops with you.
You know what? Gotta love a good rock fight, playoff basketball. Warriors, Timberwolves getting going. Nuggets, Thunder. Can they pull off the upset? Can't wait to see it. Thanks again for hopping on, Charlie. Got to check out his work at Claytheist11 on Twitter and at Swish Theory. Got to, read up on the Warriors and keep up with his Twitter for all things Warriors and Nuggets and NBA, some player development. Love your work. Gotta support Charlie here and appreciate you taking the time today, man.
Yes, sir. Anytime. I'll see you later.
Have a good one.